The year is 1987. The year I was born in November 26th. We'll get to that date in a moment. So let's give my thoughts and my rankings at the end of this specific audio video to the wrestling events of 1987 produced by the World Wrestling Federation. We start off with WrestleMania 3, the most iconic, most known WrestleMania of all time. It featured Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, and another famous match, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat taking on Macho Man Randy Savage for the Intercontinental title. The rest of the show consisted of a hot opening between the team named the Can-Am Connection, the worst tag team name of all time. We go from Demolition to the Killer Bees to the Hart Foundation to the Brainbusters to the Can-Am Connection. Awful name, but hot opening with Bob Orton and the Magnificent Morocco. We slow the pace down a wee bit with Billy Jack Haynes versus Hercules. Not much to say here. Billy Jack Haynes ended up bleeding in this match. It felt a little bit over dramatic. The Hattie Kid, Hillbilly Jim and Lil Beaver took on King Kong Bundy, Lil Tokyo, and Lord Lilbrook. The match ended by disqualification. Harley Race took on Junkyard Dog in a fun match. The Dream Team took on the Rougeau Brothers. Roddy Piper in his retirement match took on Adrian Adonis in a hair versus hair encounter. Adrian Adonis ended up getting a haircut. Dangerous Danny Davis teamed up the Hart Foundation against the British Bulldogs and Tito Santana. This match was pretty solid, but I think it could have been better. Now, I've read somewhere that Bret Hart, early on in the match, ended up blinded at the very start of the match, so he couldn't really see what he was doing. So that's the excuse there. I do believe it was still a fun, well-executed matchup, this six-man tag, but I think it could have been much better had Bret Hart been in better condition. Butch Reed defeated Coco Beware in another throwaway match. In what most call the match of the night, Ricky Steamboat had that famous classic, more famous rather than infamous, with Randy Savage. What do I think of this match? I think it's slightly overrated, if I'm being honest. I think I'm not the biggest Steamboat mark. I can see why fans rave about the match, but I think it's slightly overrated. Still the second best match on the show, but to me, the match that made WrestleMania 3 famous, put wrestling on the map and then some, the match that made WrestleMania 3 the attraction to begin with was Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. Next up, we had the Honky Tonk Man taking on Jake the Snake Roberts. Alice Cooper was here on display. He likes snakes. The Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov defeated the Killer Bees by disqualification after interference from Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Ho! And then, of course, WrestleMania 3 ended with the main event, Hulk Hogan defeating, slamming, dropping the leg on Andre the Giant in the most famous wrestling matchup of all time. Overall, I have to give WrestleMania 3 a 9 out of 10. Was every match on the card fantastic? No, it wasn't. But this is the most historic WrestleMania of all time, and it does feature two legit classic matches in their own right. Steamboat and Savage, Hulk Andre. So for me, this was a 9 out of 10. November 26, 1987, yours truly was born. Also on that day, the Survivor Series took place. Sorry for sharing, I got excited there. It took place in Richfield Coliseum. The biggest event since WrestleMania 3. It had only been the only event since WrestleMania 3, pay-per-view wise. The Survivor Series was a different, at the time anyways, a different concept to the WrestleMania pay-per-views. There wasn't so many matches as the wrestlers were in teams of 5. In Survivor Series elimination tag matches. So teams of 5 team up to go against another team of 5. And the goal is to eliminate every single member of the opposing team by pinfall, submission, disqualification, blah, 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 like a blah. The first ever Survivor Series match was captained by the Honky Tonk Man with his team that consisted of Dangerous Danny Davis, Harley Race, Hercules, and Outlaw Ron Bass. Bobby the Brain Heenan and Jimmy Hart were on hand as the managers. The opposing team was captained by the Macho Man Randy Savage. His team consisted of legends such as Jake the Snake Roberts, Ricky Steamboat, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and then there was Bruce Beefcake. This was a hot opening. And the Honky Tonk Man ended up on his own. The survivors were Jake Roberts, Ricky Steamboat, and Macho Man Randy Savage. The crowd were very into this match. Great start to the Survivor Series. Next up was something rare for the time, was a Ladies Survivor Series match, which featured the teams consisting of the Fabulous Moolah, the Jumping Bomb Angels, Rockin' Robin, and Velvet McIntyre taking on Dawn Marie, not the 2000s Dawn Marie, another Dawn Marie, Donna Christian Ello, the Glamour Girls, which consisted of Leilani Kai and Judy Martin. Sensational Sherry was the captain of the team, I believe. I think the captain of the opposing team was Fabulous Moolah, but I could be wrong. This was okay. There was a few great spots with the Jumping Bomb Angels. They were very good at doing the flippity flip-flop moves that we've become conditioned to over the last 10-15 years. It kind of dragged on for me. There wasn't many characters involved in this match. I was a bit bored. Moving on. Next up was the gigantic tag team elimination match. Now, in the early 80s, the late 80s rather, excuse me, there was only 2 of these type of Survivor Series matches, and I think this was the lesser of the 2. I think the 1988 one was far superior. This one was a cluster mess of a match. It consisted of teams led by Strike Force. In their team was the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid, the Killer Bees, B. Brian Blair and Jim Bronzell, the Fabulous Rougeau brothers, Jacques Rougeau and Raymond Rougeau, and the Young Stallions, which consisted of Jim Powers and Paul Roma. Their opposing heel team was led by the Hart Foundation, whom came out to Demolition Music, which I think Demolition should have been the captains of this team since it was their music that they came out to. Whatever. The Hart Foundation, of course, consisted of Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim Neidhart. Demolition Axe and Smash, the Dream Team, the new Dream Team, consisting of Dino Bravo and original Dream Team member Greg Valentine. The Bolsheviks, which consisted of Boris Zukov and Nikolai Volkov. And the Islanders, which consisted of Haku and Tama, nearly said Tamara, Tama, A lot of tongue twisters in here when you say a number of wrestler tag team names all at once. So, the Killer Bees and the Young Stallions were the winners. The remaining teams at the end of this cluster mess of a match had a few good moments, good wrestling, good tag team wrestling in it, but not that great overall. On to the main event, which featured team captained by Andre the Giant, and his team was the Natural Butch Reed, King Kong Bundy, One Man Gang, and Ravishing Rick Rude. The opposing team was captained by the WWF champion, Hulk Hogan. And in his team consisted of Ken Patera, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, who he was in a feud with just last year, Bam Bam Bigelow, and Don Morocco. This was a fairly entertaining Survivor Series match. I would say the opening Survivor Series match was the best Survivor Series match of the night. This one was probably the second best. I think it went downhill when Hulk Hogan was eliminated early in the match. It ended up Bam Bam Bigelow going alone in this match against King Kong Bundy, One Man Gang, and Andre the Giant. It wasn't quite Bam Bam Bigelow's time. He's became a better performer in the next generation stage of his career. Overall, I'd give the Survivor Series, which I have reviewed before, like every WrestleMania, I've reviewed this original Survivor Series just last year. It gets a 6 out of 10 from me. So the ratings look like in the last year to feature just 2 pay-per-view events, since the WWE started producing pay-per-view events in 1985. In second place, the Survivor Series, 6 out of 10. And in first place, WrestleMania 3, one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time.